Hello, living in Boulder vlog, February 26, 2020, Wednesday, 11:58 p.m. Managed to get my vlog in right in the nick of time for this day. I lagged because I kind of wanted to finish my book, the Egyptian book, Bible, but just kept dragging on because I built the chapters today, I think. And it dragged on because they were just really little. And I think I actually even want to count them all. So, whoa. How many are there? There's like 500 or something. I'm going to do that 500 times. Yikes. But the easier the work gets, the better. And I think, yeah, I'm at easier part now. Didn't have to do any like thinking, but I should have. It probably would have been quicker to just build it. I don't know, build it right off of the site that I had now. But I had on my site like the last 15 years or something. And I had to do lots of things like take the numbers off and stuff. So, whatever. The important thing is that you just break it down and something that, morsels of information that you can have the essential ingredients to be able to memorize the book, which are having lots of different books and lots of different, chapters or chapters and then mini chapters, and then have the size of all of them and have all of them named so that you can, remember where you are if you find something interesting, just help remember. So anyway, today, while I was doing that, I was listening because I was listening to Montesquieu before, and then I started listening to Polybius. And then Polybius was talking about Plutarch, writing about Lycurgus. So I listened to Lycurgus a bunch of times. Because I'm being an investigator. I want to be able to write a great article about like the division of power and like the situation today. Even I want to write like a article on my website. One thing about my website, which I feel super blessed about, is the fact that I've got this voice, man. I got a hardcore voice, a badass voice. Because it's weird. My Google Analytics don't make no sense because it says that most of the people on my site, in fact, maybe I should go there now and read it. It says that my computer is frozen. Huh. Wait, let's try this again. Here we are. If you go to analytics, it says that most of the people are American who go to my website. It does it in terms of like the last week. So 12,000 users in the last week, and right now there's 1,102 people on it. And it's always like that at around this time of day, and that's because there's 11. There's 1,000 people on my website in India, and there's only 2 people on my website in China. Oh wow! And there's only 1 person on my website in America. And if I look at my website during the day, there's like 9 people on my website in America, but there's like 150 people on my website at least, or 350 on my website on India. And like there's never less than 100, like 150 people in Bengaluru, India during the nighttime, and then in the day there's never less than like 50 or whatever, right? So it's like everybody on my website's in India. If you look at the right now numbers, but if you go over here to to location, out of the 12,518 people, it says that 4,977 of them are in America and only 996 people from India. So in the last week, Google Earth thinks that 996 Indians went to my website, But Google Earth also thinks that there's 1,100 Indians on my website right now. So that's Google Earth for you. But anyway, how did I get onto that? Oh yeah. So that means that like people are all over my website. And I don't even trust the other numbers if those numbers don't make sense. But the other numbers would I'll say that like the average person's on there like well maybe you can say it even on this thing. Yeah, the average person does 4.14 pages and they're on there for 2 minutes and 43 seconds. So anyway, so a lot of new, and 25% of the people are like new. At least that's what it was before. Where where did it say that? Yeah. 61.5% male. But there's this graph that said like how many percent of them were new. Here, I'll click on audience overview. Anyway, whatever. But before it said that 25% of them were returning. So there's all these people who are just falling into my website, even though it's not. If you click my name on Google, you don't see my website anywhere. You just see like pages from my website. You can click and find it that way. Even if you go to my Google profile, I said my website on my Google profile, but if you go on Google, it doesn't show my website anywhere on there. But anyway, so that means there's tons of people go to my website, and there's the front page, and then there's the secondary pages on my website, the education and sports center. And so I know there's lots of people going on those pages too. I don't know how to identify which pages they are because they name them, even though I don't have any ads on my website, they name them their own names based on like different items that you can buy. And they even say how much I make. It's weird. I need to go and check out Facebook analytics and see if anybody else does analytics too pretty soon. I want to like fix the surface level on my site first, but anyway, my point is that my point is I was making sure that the time was going. A lot of the times I talk for like 5 minutes and then it turns out I never even hit record. My point is that I know that a lot of people are going to my website, which means that that's like all these eyeballs on those pages, like my front page and my different pages. And so, I'm not like, I don't have like a blog where you write different things and then it's like, what did you write today? What did you write the next day? That's like how my verbal vlog goes. Rather, I'm more of like a writer, like how a songwriter is a writer, like Michael Jackson is a writer, and he writes these songs, and even though it's not even that many words, they become famous songs, and people go and listen to them over and over again. It's the amazing thing about music and songs. So I can be that kind of a writer because I have this little bit of area, that's like a couple pages worth. It's just the white area, maybe what you can see in a screen, and then you scroll down, and maybe that much area on the next screen down. I think it's like 1,000 words or something. My front page is 13 pages worth. So I don't know how many pages the education is. That was the one that I was working on the other day. But so I have this little bit of area to condense the idea, like a song, to perfect it. So instead of writing profusely lots of things and lots of books and stuff, just write one thing, but write it perfectly. And so that is what really motivates me and makes me excited to do it when I know how many people are already going to my website anyway, to that page, because that's where those are the link pages where you have to go to the other pages. So, that's what I want to do next. In fact, I never even read what I wrote. I wrote like 3 days ago when I started this, trying to catch up on my books. I wrote on my education page in the top part, just like I'm trying to type education. Then I decided I needed to go and work on Montesquieu, but I never even read it, not even once, because that's how quickly I just busted away from it. But one thing I need to do on Montesquieu is make the links. And actually, I don't know if I might, when I get back, because I've been working on these books, I might be able to write and not be sucked into that Montesquieu, making the links. But today, all day, I was working on the Egyptian Bible, and I felt like it was like bad karma for me. It just felt icky to know that I had that book in such a basic condition for like 15 years. That was one of the first books I think I put on my website. I put it on there at the same time as, what was another one? That was like the first one. That and like the Mahabharata, you know? And then I just dumped, and then I just kind of, because I think the only place that they had it available that long ago was in the format where it's just that one big page of all this gomp together. And so you just have to copy it and sift it out yourself. But now they have the site where you can actually, it's linked to different pages. It would have been easier. But yeah, to know that it was there for that long, I never fixed it. And that's the only book that I didn't do. I had to fix it. So I'm gonna, right now, I'm about halfway through the menu, and I'm making sure that the links are done. And then after that, I think I'm gonna count them, like 500 of them, and then I'm done. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. And then the only thing I have to do after that on my menu page, on my education page, is is converting, adding time to the pages of like a dozen books. And I can do all of those together in a batch edit. You just put all of the menus on one page. So, but today, the thing that I was listening to that I'm really excited about, because as I was saying, I'm going to write the thing on my page, on my education page. But the theme that I want to write, because I'm like a Roman guy. My theme is Rome, bold of Rome, and because because what I want to do is trace, America and politics, and then trace it all the way up to the current time, analyze the current time, and then prescribe the future. Make like the ultimate historical book, and hopefully do it in just as minimum as I can, just like really simply, but explain all of it. So like our Constitution, which is the oldest constitution in the whole world. So, people like to say, oh, America's the youngest country in the world. It's actually the oldest country in the world. And then all of the other countries model their constitution off of our constitution. And because we have the oldest constitution, that's how you would gauge the age of a country, because you can't say, oh, we have the youngest culture. Well, what about our Native American element, and then all of our European element, which comes from Europe, we have, everybody has the oldest culture. So anyway, so kind of losing my train of thought. I'm high right now. I like to get super high before I do the video, but so yeah, like American Constitution, we get our the separation of three powers, right? And so like, where's that come from? Well, our founding fathers got it from Montesquieu. Montesquieu got it from Polybius. Polybius got it from Plutarch, writing about Lycurgus, who was the founder of Sparta in the 800s, 820 BC. So when he founded Sparta, it had 30,000 citizens. So he was the king. It was already a kingdom, but it was a like it was in a state of disarray. There was way too much rich people who had way too much, and then way too many homeless people who didn't have enough at all. Kind of like this is how America is now, in need of a new society. And Lycurgus happened to be a king who happened to be in a really good position to become a demagogue, or to become an architect of a new country. The the classical term for king, meaning of a king, which you can read about Aristotle talking about, giving the definition of a king, and got the idea from Plato, is of somebody who is a designer of a country and has autocratic power of a country because everybody wants that person to be, because they have because they happened to take over the country when the country needed to be like a cop figure to come in and set everything straight. And when you happen to be in a situation like that, and that person also happens to be a really good, hardworking genius, then you can create these very special magical societies of like where everybody is of one mind and proud of themselves, and it's like, it's like the us versus them, like football fans, like it fires up the citizens. And back in those days, there were in Greece, they had that world culture, but they also had the city states where every single city had its own political system, and so it was a popular thing to do and an culturally accepted thing to do, that to just experiment with all the different political systems that you could come up with. And so they were very educated in that stuff. In politics back in those days, they didn't have computers like we do, but they had lots of different societies and countries like that. So they were more advanced than us in that sense. So that was a smiled upon, encouraged thing, is to try to create these different like little societies that you can, because back in those days countries were either growing or shrinking, and bringing people together, it was created a strong culture. And so how would you do that, so there would be just, anyway, so after all those years they figured out that there's actually three elements to power, because they noticed that they kept bouncing around between different systems and in a certain pattern. And so there's the kingship, there's the monarchy, where the one guy has the power over the whole city. And then you have the aristocracy, where it's a group of the rich people who get along with each other and control the city. And then you have the pure democracy, where everybody has a vote and everybody has the same power, and they would actually write this down in their constitution and their rules for their country. And so they noticed that there are these three different kinds, but each of these three different types of political systems had their weaknesses. With the kingship, the weakness was, well, if you had a bad king, he would abuse his power. And then the weakness of the aristocracy is, well, then those people abuse their riches and become lazy and make bad decisions and become disconnected with the rest of society, and you get this, like, the rich versus the poor. And then with the democracy, the problem is there's no reward for good behavior, because everybody's treated the same. So then you get people who are valuable and intelligent people who should be listened to, who aren't, and then it's kind of becomes like whoever, it kind of degenerates into like a tribal, very primitive society, where whoever's stronger or more of an asshole gets more of their way, and all order of society crumbles, and nobody wants to read and respects the law, and it just falls apart. And so that creates a need for a strong man to take over. So that's how you transition from a democracy into a kingship, and then a kingship would then transfer back into into an aristocracy when they have to share, and then the aristocracy gets transferred into a democracy when they abuse their power, and so it's this like cycle. That's why they call it revolution, like a revolve. Like they say, the French Revolution, the way we think about it is just it happens like once, and because now we think of of evolving into the future and not regressing or going into a circle. And so yeah, back in those times it was just like which one is best. So they realized that a mixture between the three and a perfect balance was the best culture to do that. And so the first person to actually talk about the balance between the three was Polybius when he was writing in in his histories. He lived in the 200s, like 300 to 218. So in like 250 BC, he wrote the book, which is 1200. No, it's like 1600 pages, and he uh, he he said that they got their ideas from the Spartans because the Romans got started in 753 BC with Romulus, and Lycurgus lived in 820. Like was like born lived from 850 to 775 more or less, and so like in the 820s they got started with so that's like 120 years, 130 wait 820 to 750. Yeah, that's like 70 years before the founding of Rome. So kind of like the same time, but Rome had two founders. Like the founder of Sparta was Lycurgus, but the Rome's founder was Romulus. But then he was the founder of like he actually founded Rome in the similar way as Lycurgus, making everything equal for everybody. He had like 100 citizens, and each citizen had the exact same size plot of land. It was Rome's similar era to Boulder is amazing. Like because Rome was founded like that, and Boulder was founded like that too. And Wild West and country cities, they come out here and they plot it. They actually plot out civilizedly plot out the land. We plotted out our blocks and our lots for people equally, and like the founding of Rome. So that's what Lycurgus did, but the second founder of Rome was Numa Pompilius, and he wasn't even a Roman. He was a Samnite, which was a tribe of people just next to Rome in the mountains. And he knew the Pythagorean theorem, like Pythagoras, and which was the big religion in southern Italy at the time, and he knew all these other like laws and stuff, and was well read. So they brought him in because he was so well read, the most smartest person around to be the next king of Rome. But the Samnites were a colony of Sparta, and so they were probably a colony of Sparta that was created after Lycurgus. Lycurgus founded Sparta, and then they sent out a colony after he founded Sparta. Maybe they had like extra people, and so they went over to Rome because Rome was a place where a lot of people came in because they would go to the Tiber and then go up the Tiber River, and that's how Rome settled with lots of people, lots of different people. And so the Samnites are probably the same way. So they were a colony of Sparta. So Rome was kind of like a colony of Sparta, like it was half colony of the Trojans from Romulus, who was from the royal family of Alba Longa, who were the Trojans, and 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 then the second king was from Sparta. So that's why Plutarch or Polybius was like it was making all the connections between Rome and Sparta, and saying that the divisions of the three powers actually started in Sparta, and so the Romans got their ideas from Lycurgus and Sparta. So what Lycurgus did was it was Sparta was very in disarray, and Lycurgus was really popular because he gave up his kingship in favor of his brother's son, because it was his brother who was the king before him who died, and so people thought that was really honorable to not try to take it for himself, and instead he traveled around the world. He went and became very well read, and went to India. Well, some say India, but he went to Egypt and Greece, and he went to the Oracle of Delphi and studied with him, and got ideas, and that was like a really civilized, like a college town back in those days, and Athens, and then so when he came back to Sparta, they wanted a good king. They're ready for a king, and so they wanted him, and he said, okay, well, I have all these ideas, and so he said, he did what Romulus did. He goes, okay, everybody's gonna make it equal, and so that meant. That's like he was like the modern Bernie Sanders. I'm going to tax all the wealthy and give it all to the poor and make everything equal. And so that's what he did. But he went to the assembly and he said that, and all the rich people were like, wait, what? And so they all chased after him, and he ran away from them and outran everybody because he was the fastest runner. But there was this one young guy who kept up with him, and he turned around to see if he got away, and the guy whacked him with his stick right on his eye and put his eye out. And so he stopped and said, hey, look, he put my eye out. And they were like, oh no, look, he got attacked. And they were like, what should we do to the kid? Because they were going to punish him. He said, oh, just give him to me as my slave. And so he actually taught him, became like his master, and that guy became his number one pupil. But he told the people, and then because the people eventually followed him in his new law that said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make Sparta equal for everybody. And I think they said that they made 9,000 citizens, and so maybe that's why they sent out. That's how they could send out the colonies of the extra people. But I think it was Montesquieu who was saying that when Lycurgus founded Sparta, they had 30,000 citizens. So I don't know where he got that number, but and it's because he was saying, because compared to Sparta in like the 150 BC or the 250 BC. The time of the philosopher who lived at 250 BC, it only had 700 citizens left because their culture was on the decline. So I guess Sparta lived in the classical sense, survived from 820 to 250, if you want to be, or I guess, yeah. So 350, 450, 550, 650, 750, 850, yeah, like 600 years. So like 500 years is something that you can expect a culture to last. That's how long the Roman kingdom lasted. The Roman Republic lasted from 509 to 27 BC. Anyway, and then the kingdom of Rome lasted 250 years. America's lasted 250 years so far. My timeline works like that, like 500 years across. But but he said, yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to make everybody's lot exactly the same, and make everything equal. And we're going to make so nobody's jealous of anybody else. We're going to make everybody poor. So we're going to make it so that we don't even use gold for money. We only use iron for money. And money's going to depreciate so much that if you want to buy anything that's really expensive, you need like an entire ox cart worth of it. Because we're only going to be able to live the cheapest. Our houses aren't going to be made with anything more fancy than an axe, and our furniture isn't going to be made with anything more fancy than a saw, and no decoration allowed anywhere on the house, and I think they did have slaves, but those were the people, the Helots, those are the people who just did the farming, but all of the Spartans were. It was basically what he designed was a giant military camp. Sparta was just it was divided into like different troops, like platoons, like in the army, mess halls, but everybody had to be accepted into one of them unanimously. People could vote somebody out anonymously by squeezing a clay flat instead of round when they throw it into the basket. And so they would be allowed to join a mess, a troop, like from the years of 20 until 30. But if they don't get one by the time they're 30, they have to walk around the central square like a certain number of hours naked, singing songs about how much of a loser they are. And like none of the young guys have to like give them a place to sit when they eat, or give them respect. And and they had to do, all of the young men and women had to do all of the processions naked, and all of their exercises naked, because that made them self-conscious of their bodies. So it made everybody stay physically fit, and everybody compared each other by how good they are at like gymnastics and jumping and running, and all the sports, and even stealing. And there's a story of a kid who stole a little rodent, and he didn't want to get caught, so he let it like bite his guts out and died. But yeah, and like if they thought that a kid might not survive if he looked ugly or deformed, they would make him sit, and they would put him on a rock for like a bunch of days, and if they survived, then they would take him back, like a newborn. And yeah, and it was like they everybody had to be ranked. Like you had to be able to ask somebody, hey, who's the best in the town? Who are the best? And it was based on how good of an athlete you are. So they had to like have names ready, and then they're okay, who were the worst? You had to have all the names of the worst, and and yeah, nobody was able to like own anything. It was just getting up and training all day long. So, but they became the second of the two powerful and famous kingdoms in Rome. So it was a formula that worked. That very very frugal, but that's exactly what Rome prided themselves on, frugal. But Rome, Polybius was saying that Sparta Lycurgus was the beginning of the separation of powers between those three factions, because he ingeniously set it up so that let's see, everybody was the same wealth, so there was no aristocracy. The king was basically on the same level as the rest of the citizenry. He was athletic. Even him, like Lycurgus, was the fastest runner. He was just as athletic and Spartan as everybody else. And so and how they had people vote people in for the different mess halls. That was the people power, like the people's assembly. And and then they had a king, because so it still was a monarchy. And then as far as the aristocratic wing of it, they had like the people who were the most, the celebrated, the best warriors. They were the aristocrats. So it was this perfect mix. So that's what Plutarch said. I mean, Polybius. So Polybius said that Rome perfected even more writing with the describing the consuls. Consuls were were like the kings, but they were and then they had their senators, and then the plebeians, and the patricians, and then the plebeians were like the citizen power, and then they eventually were able to appoint their equites, their special representative. So that's kind of like the modern day equivalent to our modern day like governor representing the local state. And so anyway, I want to write all that, the similarities between the three, the perfect separation between three powers of Rome. And he was talking about the pride of Romans, and yeah, so to quote all the different quotes and link them together, and then put them all, like tie them all together in this small one little thing would be article, is what I'm super excited about doing. But I think I have to finish this Egyptian Egyptian thing. First, I mean, Egypt, you know, Egypt is like the first thing you would want to read. The interesting thing about Egypt is, and this is really trippy to think about, so like, put your thinking cap on, smoke a bowl before I, because what I'm saying is really interesting and really important. Egypt, there's like 450 pages on my Egyptian Bible book. I have the Legend of the Gods, the what is it, Hymn of Osiris, and the Book of the Dead, and it's just all these collections, the entire collection of what we see on manuscripts and written inside of chambers, and of songs that people were doing, and recitations that you had to do, like its funerals and just all the different religious ceremonies. It's kind of like the Torah, which I have on my website also. And it's hang on, I'll get my brains back in just a second. What are we talking about? We're talking about the the Egyptian Bible. It's and they're talking about the gods, and they're, and the beginnings of the world. I haven't even read it yet, the whole thing. So, but they're talking about a winged disc and the ends of, and I think the flood and their immigration there and all that kind of stuff. But they're really, I think Egypt is extremely pious, and they had a really, you can tell from all of their ceremonies and stuff, they had a really old and developed society, and that would actually make sense that they would have the technology to make all those pyramids and stuff. But they were very took it very seriously, and had it like lots of prayers. But when you read that stuff, you're reading stuff that's written that's really old. I mean, we know it's really old from all of the pyramids and the inscriptions, which are really old. But you also know it's really old because of what historians say. Like Plato in dialogues, they're talking about Egypt, and he says that the music that Egypt, because Plato went to Egypt, or Plato's great grandfather Solon went to Egypt, but Plato was saying that the music that Egyptians have, their musical tunes and their songs and lyrics, are exactly the same as they were 10,000 years before that. And in the same book, Plato was talking about, and in the Republic, Plato was talking about how 10,000 years ago was the fall of Atlantis. And so that would mean that that the songs from Egypt, if they came from Atlantis, those songs are actually older than 10,000 years ago. Those songs were from Atlantis, and all of those inscriptions. So that means that all these inscriptions that you're going to read on, the Egyptian Bible, that's actually Atlantis. So we actually do have written history of Atlantis. People like to make a distinction between like mythology and history. There's this guy called Horatius Cocles, who was a famous Roman, and this was what Polybius was talking about. He's like, yeah, Romans, we have so many stories of hero Romans who put our country ahead of ourselves, and that's a mark of a great society when you're so proud of being in your society that you want, and and people are so proud of the opportunity to make your name great and to come up, make yourself popular, but in an honor way, and not because you're richer than everybody. And so that's by being the greatest, bravest person. That's the best society. So they have lots of examples of that. But there's this guy Horatius. It was when Clusium attacked Rome after they kicked out the kings in 509 BC, and he sacrificed himself so that he told him to knock down the bridge so that they couldn't invade Rome, the city, and he fought himself until they killed him. And so they, oh my God, what was I talking about? I was going somewhere with this. Oh no. Um, um, oh shit. Totally lost my train of thought. I shouldn't get so high before I do these. Anyway, yeah, okay. So, yeah. So, yeah. So anyway, they were doing I was working on Egypt, which you can get. It's like reading the history from the very beginning, from even before, from Atlantis, before. So that's just interesting to think about. I haven't read it yet though. So anyway, so we were talking about Clusium. Huh, whatever. So anyways, that's that. I'll watch this again, and I'm sure I'll remember what I was talking about. Maybe I'll write it below. So I want to write that, but I have to count the thing first. So I think I'm going to get back on that. I don't even have to think for that. But I don't think I'm going to write that anytime soon because I need to get back to exercising, and that'll be tomorrow. Yeah, unless I can finish this. I'd like to finish the counting on this first. So anyway, talk to you tomorrow.